Princess stood at the window of her quarters and watched the stars drift past. 3 cycles had passed since her marriage to the human named Daniel Brooks. 3 cycles of quiet mornings and peaceful evenings. 3 cycles of wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. The empire stretched across 1,000 star systems. Her people were tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like crystal in the light. They could move objects with their minds and sense emotions from great distances. They had conquered worlds and built cities that floated among the clouds. They were among the most powerful species in the known galaxy. And she had married a human. The Treaty of Harmonious Stars had required it. When humanity first made contact with the greater galactic community, the Empire had seen an opportunity. Humans were new, curious, and eager to trade. A diplomatic marriage between a princess and a human representative would seal the alliance and open new markets for both species. Had accepted her duty without complaint. Her family expected nothing less, but she had never expected to feel so alone. Daniel was kind. She could not deny that. He brought her tea in the mornings and asked about her day in the evenings. He learned to cook dishes from her and never complained when she worked late at the diplomatic offices. He smiled often and spoke gently and treated her with a respect that seemed almost excessive. But he was so ordinary. He could not lift a cup with his mind. He could not sense her moods unless she told him directly. He needed to sleep for 8 hours every night, and he grew tired after only 16 hours of activity. His body was soft compared to the warriors of her world, and his was barely a fraction of her own. Her father, Emperor, had called the marriage a sacrifice. Her mother had wept when the announcement was made. Her younger brother, Prince, had looked at her with pity and promised to visit often so she would not feel forgotten. They all assumed she was suffering, and perhaps she was in her own way, not because Daniel was cruel or neglectful, but because she had imagined something different for her life. She had imagined a partner who could stand beside her as an equal, not one she needed to protect like a fragile treasure. Daniel worked as a logistics coordinator at the Joint Human Trade Station orbiting Prime. It was simple work, organizing shipments and schedules and making sure goods arrived where they were supposed to go. He seemed content with it, which found both admirable and slightly sad. She managed diplomatic relations for the entire sector. She negotiated treaties, resolved disputes, and represented the interests of the empire to dozens of species. The difference in their responsibilities was vast, and she tried not to let it bother her. But sometimes, late at night, she wondered what it would be like to have a partner who truly understood her world. Daniel never complained about being overshadowed. He attended formal events at her side and made polite conversation with ambassadors and trade representatives. He learned the customs of her people and followed them carefully. He never embarrassed her or caused diplomatic incidents. He was, in every way, a perfect husband, and yet could not shake the feeling that she was living only half a life. She turned away from the window as the door to their quarters opened. Daniel entered, carrying a small package wrapped in blue paper. He smiled when he saw her, the same warm smile he always wore. "I found something at the market today," he said. "The merchant said it was from your." Accepted the package and opened it carefully. Inside was a small crystal flower, the kind that grew in the gardens of the imperial palace. She had not seen one since leaving home. "How did you find this?" she asked. "I asked around," Daniel said. "Took a few weeks, but I tracked down a trader who had some." Looked at the flower and felt something twist in her chest. It was such a small gesture, but it touched her more than she wanted to admit. Daniel always did things like this. Small kindnesses that showed he was thinking of her, even when she barely thought of him. She thanked him and placed the flower on her desk. Daniel asked about her day, and she gave him a brief summary of meetings and negotiations. He listened carefully, as he always did, though she doubted he understood most of what she described. Their evening passed quietly. They shared a meal and talked about small things. Daniel mentioned a problem with a shipment that he had solved and pretended to be interested. She told him about a difficult ambassador she had dealt with, and he offered sympathy without advice. It was comfortable. It was pleasant. It was exactly like every other evening they had shared. Was preparing for bed when her personal communicator chimed with an urgent signal. She recognized the frequency immediately. It was a direct line from the imperial palace, reserved only for matters of the highest importance. Her father's face appeared on the screen. Emperor looked older than she remembered, and his expression was grim. He said, "I have terrible news." She felt her heart begin to race. "What has happened?" "Your brother has been taken. The syndicate kidnapped from his transport 3 days ago. They are demanding a ransom we cannot pay, and they have threatened to sell him to our enemies if we do not comply." Gripped the edge of her desk. The syndicate was a criminal organization that operated in the lawless sectors beyond imperial space. They were ruthless, violent, and completely without honor. If they had, his life was in terrible danger. "What can I do?" she asked. "You are closest to their territory," her father said. "I need you to go to them and negotiate. Buy us time if nothing else. We are assembling a rescue force, but it will take weeks to reach the lawless sectors." Nodded, "I will leave immediately." Her father's expression softened slightly. "Be careful, my daughter. The syndicate has killed warriors before. Do not underestimate them." "I understand," said. The transmission ended. Stood in silence for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities and dangers. When she finally turned around, Daniel was standing in the doorway. He had heard everything. "I am coming with you," he said. Shook her head. "This is too dangerous for you. I cannot protect you and negotiate at the same time." "Then do not protect me," Daniel said. "Let me help." She looked at her husband, this ordinary human with his kind smile and gentle manner. He had no idea what he was offering. The lawless sectors had claimed the lives of trained warriors. What could he possibly contribute? But there was something in his eyes she had not seen before, a quiet determination that surprised her. "Please," he said, "let me stand with you." Against her better judgment, agreed. The Starward Grace was a small diplomatic vessel, fast and well-equipped but not designed for combat. Had chosen it because speed mattered more than firepower. Every hour they delayed was another hour spent in the hands of criminals. Daniel helped her load supplies without being asked. He moved efficiently, checking manifests and organizing storage compartments with the same careful attention he brought to his work at the trade station. Watched him from the corner of her eye and wondered again why he had insisted on coming. She had given him every opportunity to stay behind. She had explained the dangers in detail. The syndicate was not like the petty criminals he might have encountered on Earth. They controlled entire sectors of space, commanded fleets of warships, and answered to no law. Their leader, a warlord named, had personally killed an ambassador 10 cycles ago. Daniel had listened to everything she said. Then he had simply nodded and continued packing. They launched from Prime within 2 hours of receiving the transmission from her father. The journey to the lawless sectors would take 3 days at maximum speed. 3 days of travel through increasingly dangerous space, with only the two of them aboard. Spent the first hours of the journey reviewing everything she knew about the syndicate. She studied intelligence reports, diplomatic files, and the few intercepted communications her people had managed to decode. The picture they painted was not encouraging. Had risen to power through violence and cunning. He had united dozens of smaller criminal organizations under his banner and turned the syndicate into a force that even major powers hesitated to challenge. His territory was a maze of asteroid bases and hidden stations, protected by mercenaries and pirates who owed him absolute loyalty. Negotiating with such a person would require all of her skill. She would need to find something he wanted more than the ransom he had demanded, something that would make releasing worth his while. She was deep in thought when Daniel entered the cockpit with 2 cups of tea. He handed her one and sat down in the co-pilot seat, looking out at the stars. "Tell me about him," Daniel said. "Your brother." Took a sip of tea before answering. "Is young, eager to prove himself. He volunteered for this diplomatic mission because he wanted to show our father he was ready for greater responsibilities." "Sounds brave." "Foolish," corrected. "He should have waited for a proper escort. Instead, he traveled with only a small guard, and the syndicate intercepted him easily." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "You care about him a lot." "He is my brother, of course I care." "That is not what I meant." Daniel turned to look at her. "You could have sent someone else to negotiate. You could have waited for your father's rescue force. But you left immediately, even knowing the danger." Did not know how to respond. She had not thought about her decision in those terms. Was in danger, so she had to help him. It was that simple. "Tell me about the station where they are holding him," Daniel said. "Why do you want to know?" "I like to understand the places I am going." Pulled up the intelligence reports and shared the basic layout with him. Its main base was built into a massive asteroid in the sector. It had docking facilities, living quarters, detention areas, and a central command complex. The exact positions of these areas were unknown, but the general structure had been mapped by long-range sensors. Daniel studied the information carefully, asking questions about security systems, patrol patterns, and emergency protocols. Answered when she could, though many details were simply unavailable. She found herself slightly impressed by the specificity of his questions. For a logistics coordinator, he seemed unusually interested in tactical matters. "What were you before?" she asked suddenly. Daniel looked up from the display. "Before what?" "Before you became a logistics coordinator, before you came to Prime." He was quiet for a long moment. "I had a different job." "What kind of job?" "The kind that required me to understand places I was going." He smiled slightly, but there was something behind the smile that could not read. "It was a long time ago. I am a different person now." Wanted to press further, but something in his expression told her to leave the subject alone. They had been married for 3 cycles, and she realized she knew almost nothing about his life before they met. She had never thought to ask. She had assumed there was nothing worth knowing. The second day of travel brought them closer to the lawless sectors. The space around them grew darker, with fewer stars and more debris. Wrecked ships drifted past occasionally, reminders of the violence that ruled this region. Daniel spent hours studying the navigation charts, learning the routes through the asteroid fields and the locations of known syndicate patrols. Watched him work and felt a strange mixture of gratitude and guilt. He was trying so hard to be useful, even though she knew there was little he could actually do when they arrived. On the 3rd day, they crossed into territory. Almost immediately, their sensors detected ships moving to intercept them, transmitted their diplomatic credentials, and requested safe passage to speak with. After a tense hour of waiting, the response came. Would meet with the princess. She was instructed to proceed to his station and dock at the designated bay. Any deviation from the approved route would be treated as hostile action. Acknowledged the instructions and set their course. Beside her, Daniel was perfectly calm, his eyes fixed on the approaching asteroid station. "Remember," said, "let me do the talking. You are here as my consort, nothing more. Stay quiet, stay close to me, and do not draw attention to yourself." "Understood," Daniel said. "I mean it. These people are dangerous. They will look for any excuse to harm us." Daniel nodded. "I know." The station grew larger in their viewport, a dark mass of metal and stone bristling with weapons platforms and docking bays. Ships moved around it like insects, patrol vessels and cargo haulers, and sleek fighters that could destroy the starward Grace in seconds. They docked without incident. The bay doors sealed behind them, cutting off their escape route. Felt her heart beating faster as she prepared to disembark. Armed guards waited for them at the bottom of the boarding ramp. They were a reptilian species known for their strength and aggression. Their weapons were aimed directly at Daniel. "The princess will come with us," the lead guard said. "The human stays with the ship." "He is my consort," said. "He comes with me." The guard hesitated, then spoke into a communicator. After a moment he nodded. "Very well, but he will be searched." They searched Daniel thoroughly, confiscating a small utility knife he carried. He did not resist or complain. When they were finished, the guards led them through dark corridors toward the central command complex. Walked with her head high, projecting confidence she did not entirely feel. Beside her, Daniel moved quietly, his eyes taking in every detail of their surroundings. She noticed him counting guards, nodding doorways, tracking the route they traveled. It was strange behavior for a logistics coordinator, but she had more important things to worry about. The doors to the command chamber opened and they stepped inside. Sat waiting for them on a throne made of salvaged ship hulls. He was enormous, covered in scars, with yellow eyes that gleamed with cruel intelligence. "Princess," he said, his voice like grinding stone, "how kind of you to visit. I have been looking forward to this conversation." His smile promised nothing good. The command chamber smelled of metal and smoke. Sat on his throne like a king surveying his domain, surrounded by armed guards and flickering displays that showed views from across the station. He was even larger than had expected, his hide telling the story of 100 violent encounters. "You came faster than I anticipated," said. "Your brother must mean a great deal to you." "He is a prince of the empire," replied, keeping her voice steady. "His safety is of the highest importance to my people." "Of course it is," leaned forward, his yellow eyes gleaming, "which is why you will pay whatever I ask for his return." "We are prepared to negotiate. The Empire has authorized me to offer significant compensation for his safe release." Laughed. It was an ugly sound like rocks scraping together. "Negotiate? How civilized. Tell me, princess, what makes you think I have any interest in your negotiations?" Felt the first stirring of unease. "You demanded a ransom. That implies you wish to make a deal." "I demanded a ransom because I knew the Empire would never pay it, not because I wanted the money." Rose from his throne and walked toward her. He was massive, towering over both and Daniel. "Do you know what your brother is worth to the enemies of your empire? Far more than any ransom I could demand." The blood drained from his face. "You intend to sell him." "I intended to sell him," corrected. "But now I have something even better. A princess of the delivered directly to my doorstep. 2 members of the royal family. My buyers will be very pleased." Reached for her telekinetic abilities, preparing to defend herself. She had trained since childhood to use her powers in combat. She could crush weapons, deflect attacks, and throw enemies across rooms with a thought. But before she could act, one of the guards pressed a button on a device mounted to the wall. A high-pitched whine filled the chamber, and felt her powers drain away like water through sand. She tried to lift a nearby object and nothing happened. "Neural dampeners," said, watching her struggle. "Very effective against your kind. Without your precious telekinesis, you are nothing but a fragile creature in an expensive dress." Guards moved forward, weapons raised. Backed away, but there was nowhere to go. She was trapped, powerless, and completely at the mercy of a warlord who had no intention of showing any. "Take them to the detention level," ordered. "Keep them alive and undamaged. The buyers will want to inspect the merchandise before the sale." 2 guards grabbed his arms. She struggled, but without her powers she was no match for their strength. Daniel stood motionless beside her, his face expressionless. "Daniel," she gasped, "I am sorry, I should never have brought you here. She expected him to be afraid. She expected him to beg for mercy or try to bargain for his life. She expected the quiet, gentle man she had married to crumble in the face of real danger. She was wrong. Daniel moved. It happened so fast that could barely track it. One moment he was standing still. The next moment, the guard on his left was falling with a broken arm, and Daniel had taken his weapon. He fired twice and the guard's holding collapsed. He spun, struck a third guard in the throat, caught the man's weapon as he fell, and threw it at the neural dampener device on the wall. The device shattered and felt her powers return like a rushing tide. 4 guards were down before anyone could react. Daniel stood in the center of the chamber, holding a weapon in each hand, his body positioned between and the remaining enemies. His face had changed. The kind smile was gone, replaced by an expression of cold, focused intensity. His eyes moved constantly, tracking threats, calculating angles, planning his next movements. He looked like a completely different person. Stared at him in shock. "What is this? What kind of human are you?" "The kind you should not have threatened," Daniel said quietly. More guards rushed into the chamber. Daniel moved to meet them and watched in amazement as her husband fought with a skill she had never imagined. He was fast, precise, and utterly ruthless. Every movement had purpose. Every strike found its target. She had seen warriors train. She had watched combat demonstrations by the finest soldiers in the empire. None of them moved like Daniel moved. Her powers had returned and she used them now, lifting guards and throwing them against walls, deflecting weapons' fire, creating shields of force to protect herself and Daniel. They fought side by side, and for the first time since the attack began, felt hope. "The dampeners," Daniel called out. "There will be more throughout the station. We need to move before they can activate another one." "My brother said, we cannot leave without him." "We will not." Daniel grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a side corridor. "But we need to get out of this room first." They ran through dark passageways, Daniel leading the way with certainty that made no sense. He had only seen the station's layout once, on a display screen during their journey, yet he moved like he had memorized every turn. Guards appeared ahead of them. Daniel dropped 2 before could even react. She used her powers to handle the rest, lifting them and slamming them into the walls. "How are you doing this?" she demanded as they continued running. "Who are you?" "Later," Daniel said. "Focus on survival first." They reached a junction where 4 corridors met. Daniel stopped, checking each direction, listening for sounds of pursuit. "Detention level is below us," he said. "We need to find a lift or stairs." "How do you know that?" "The layout of stations like this follows predictable patterns. Detention areas are always separated from main facilities, usually on lower levels with limited access points." He glanced at her. Basic tactical architecture. Did not know what to say. 3 cycles of marriage, and she had never suspected that her husband possessed knowledge like this. She had assumed he was ordinary. She had assumed wrong. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. His voice echoed from speakers, ordering all personnel to hunt down the escaped prisoners. "They will seal the station," said. "We will be trapped." "Probably," Daniel agreed. "But we have some time before they organize a proper response. Chaos works in our favor right now." He found a lift and disabled its security lock with quick, practiced movements. They descended 2 levels and emerged in a darker section of the station, where the corridors were narrower, and the air smelled of fear and desperation. "Detention level," Daniel said. "Stay close." They moved through the darkness together, a princess with restored powers and a human who had turned out to be far more than he appeared. Somewhere ahead was waiting. Glanced at her husband as they walked. His face was calm, his breathing steady, his movements confident. He had transformed from a quiet logistics coordinator into something she could not fully understand. When this is over, she said quietly, you will explain everything. Daniel nodded, I promise. They continued forward, hunting for the prince in the heart of enemy territory. The detention level was a maze of narrow corridors and heavy doors. Each cell was sealed with electronic locks and monitored by cameras that Daniel disabled as they passed. He worked quickly and quietly, his hands moving with practiced ease. Watched him and felt like she was seeing her husband for the first time. You have done this before, she said. It was not a question. Yes. Many times. More than I want to remember. Daniel finished with another lock and moved to the next corridor. Before I came to Prime, I was a soldier, not the kind that stands in formation and follows orders. The kind that goes to places no one else can go, does things no one else can do, and disappears before anyone knows what happened. A special operations soldier, said, recognizing the term from human military files she had once reviewed. 15 years, Daniel confirmed. I served on Earth during some of the worst conflicts in my planet's recent history. I trained in every environment humans can survive. I learned to fight in ways that your people have never imagined. They reached another junction. Daniel paused, listening. Somewhere nearby, boots were striking metal floors. He gestured for to press against the wall. 3 guards passed without seeing them. Daniel waited until they were gone, then continued forward. Why did you never tell me? Asked. Because that life is over. I left the military because I wanted something different. I wanted peace. I wanted to build things instead of destroying them. He glanced back at her, and for a moment she saw the gentle man she had known for 3 cycles. When I married you, I chose to leave all of that behind. I did not want you to see me as a weapon. I wanted to be a husband. Did not know how to respond. She had spent 3 cycles thinking of Daniel as ordinary, as someone she needed to protect. She had him for his weakness and felt guilty for being tied to someone so unremarkable. She had been completely blind. Here, Daniel said, stopping at a door marked with symbols she did not recognize. This is a high-security cell. Your brother would be kept somewhere like this. He worked on the lock while stood guard. Her powers hummed beneath her skin, ready to strike at any threat. She felt stronger than she had in years, as if seeing Daniel clearly for the first time had awakened something inside her. The lock clicked open. Daniel pulled the door aside and saw her brother. Was young, barely past his first century, with the same crystalline skin and noble features as. He sat in the corner of the cell, his wrists bound with restraints designed to block his telekinetic abilities. When he saw his sister, his eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "You came." "Of course I came." She rushed to his side and began working on his restraints. "Are you hurt?" "No, they kept me comfortable enough. I think they wanted me in good condition for the sale." Looked past her at Daniel, confusion crossing his face. "Who is this?" "My husband." The human's confusion deepened. But how did a human get past the guards? "It is a long story," said. The restraints fell away and rose unsteadily to his feet. "Can you walk?" "I think so," stretched his arms, testing his restored powers. "My abilities are returning." "Good, we need to move." Daniel was already at the door, checking the corridor. "The alarms have brought more guards to this level. Our window for escape is closing." They moved through the detention level as a group, Daniel leading, protecting the rear and between them. The young prince was weak from his captivity, but he kept pace without complaint. "This way leads to a cargo bay," Daniel said, pointing down a side corridor. "If we can reach it, we might be able to find a ship." "What about the Starward Grace?" asked. "They will have it guarded by now. We need an alternative." They encountered resistance twice on their way to the cargo bay. Both times, Daniel handled the guards before could even react. She watched him fight and saw something she had never noticed before. He was not just skilled. He was controlled. Every movement was calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum effort. He never used more force than necessary, never wasted a single motion. It was beautiful in a terrible way. "How do humans learn to fight like this?" asked in a whisper. "Thousands of years of practice," replied. "They have been fighting each other since before they could write." They reached the cargo bay and found it mostly empty. A few small transport ships sat on the landing platforms, but they were civilian vessels, not designed for speed or combat. "That one," Daniel said, pointing to a battered cargo hauler. "It has enough range to reach the edge of territory. Once we are out of space, we can call for help." They ran toward the ship. They were halfway across the bay when the main doors burst open and entered with a squad of his best warriors. "You have caused me a great deal of trouble," the warlord said. His voice was calm, but his yellow eyes burned with fury. "I have lost guards, equipment, and pride tonight. Someone is going to pay for that." Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between and the others. "Let them go. I will stay." Daniel no said. "Get to the ship, take your brother and leave. I will not abandon you." Daniel looked back at her and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was not fear or resignation. It was certainty. Complete, unshakable certainty. "You are not abandoning me," he said. "You are trusting me. That is different." Wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at her to stay and fight. But she looked at Daniel, truly looked at him, and she understood something important. He was not asking her to leave because he wanted to sacrifice himself. He was asking her to leave because he needed room to work. "Come with me," she said, grabbing her brother's arm. "We are going to the ship." "But your husband will join us shortly." She pulled toward the cargo hauler. "Trust me." As they ran, heard the sounds of combat behind her. Weapons fire, impacts, cries of pain. She did not look back. She trusted Daniel to do what he did best. They reached the ship and powered up the engines. Through the viewport, she could see Daniel fighting. He was a blur of motion amongst warriors, dodging strikes, delivering blows, using every object and surface around him as a weapon. One by one, the warriors fell, until only remained. The warlord was larger and stronger than any of his soldiers. He swung at Daniel with massive fists, each blow powerful enough to crush bone. Daniel dodged, weaved, struck back at weak points, kept moving, kept fighting. "Come on," whispered, "come on." Daniel took a hit to the shoulder and stumbled, pressed forward, sensing victory. But Daniel rolled with the impact, came up behind the warlord, and delivered a devastating strike to the back of his knee. Fell, Daniel hit him again and again, targeting the same vulnerable spots until the massive creature collapsed completely. Then Daniel ran for the ship. Had the boarding ramp open before he reached it. He threw himself aboard, and she sealed the door behind him. Within seconds, they were lifting off, accelerating toward the cargo bay doors. "The doors are closed," said, panic in his voice. "Not for long," replied. She gathered her power and pushed with all her strength. The doors crumpled outward like paper, and the cargo hauler shot through the opening into open space. Behind them, station was falling into chaos. They had escaped. Daniel sat in the co-pilot seat, breathing hard, blood running from a cut on his forehead. He looked at and smiled his familiar, gentle smile. "I told you to trust me," he said. Laughed. It was a sound of relief and wonder, and something else she could not quite name. "I do," she said. "Now I do." The cargo hauler was not fast, but it was fast enough. They put distance between themselves and station with every passing minute. Pushed the engines as hard as they would go, her eyes fixed on the navigation display. "We are being followed," said from the sensor station. "3 ships, they are gaining on us." Check the readings. The pursuit vessels were light fighters, built for speed and combat. The cargo hauler had no weapons and could not outrun them. Within an hour, they would be overtaken. "Is there anywhere we can hide?" she asked Daniel. He was studying the star charts, his brow furrowed in concentration. There is an asteroid field ahead, dense enough to provide cover but dangerous to navigate. How dangerous? Very, he looked at her, but I can get us through. Did not hesitate, do it. Daniel took the controls and changed their course toward the asteroid field. Behind them, the pursuit ships adjusted to follow. They were closing the gap faster now, sensing that their prey was trying to escape. The first asteroids appeared on the viewport, dark shapes tumbling through space. Daniel flew directly toward them, his hands steady on the controls. He wove between the rocks with precision that seemed impossible, anticipating their movements, finding paths that could not even see. "How are you doing this?" asked in amazement. "Pattern recognition," Daniel replied, not taking his eyes from the viewport. "Humans developed games that required us to track multiple moving objects simultaneously. Hand-eye coordination exercises, thousands of hours of practice." He banked sharply to avoid a spinning boulder. "My people have been preparing for challenges like this without knowing it." The pursuit ships entered the field behind them. One immediately clipped an asteroid and spun away, its hull breached. The other two slowed, trying to navigate more carefully. Daniel did not slow down. He pushed the cargo hauler through gaps that seemed too narrow, around corners that appeared too sharp, past obstacles that materialized from the darkness with barely a second to react. It was the most impressive display of piloting had ever witnessed. The second pursuit ship made a mistake. It tried to take a shortcut through a cluster of smaller rocks and collided with something it had not seen. The explosion lit up the asteroid field behind them. One ship remained. Its pilot was better than the others, matching Daniel's course through the deadly maze. It was gaining on them again. "We are almost through," Daniel said. "Once we clear the field, we can broadcast a distress signal. Your father's rescue fleet should be close enough to respond." "The last ship is still following," said. "It will catch us before help arrives." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he made a decision. "I am going to stop the ship." What stared at him? "Why would you do that?" "Because that pilot is too good. He will stay with us until we clear the field and then he will destroy us." Daniel began reducing their speed. "But if I stop here in the middle of the asteroids, he will have to stop too, and then we will have a chance." "A chance to do what?" "To end this." The cargo hauler came to rest in a relatively clear pocket of space, surrounded on all sides by tumbling rocks. The pursuit ship slowed as well, approaching cautiously. Its weapons were charged and ready. "Stay here," Daniel said. "Keep the engines running. When I signal, fly directly out of the field and do not look back." "Daniel, what are you planning?" He was already moving toward the cargo bay. "Trust me, one more time." Watched him go, her heart pounding. Beside her was pale with fear. "What is he going to do?" her brother asked. "I do not know," gripped the controls tightly, "but I trust him." In the cargo bay, Daniel found what he needed. An emergency pressure suit designed for repairs in vacuum, a tether line, a portable cutting torch. He suited up quickly and cycled through the airlock. The cold of space surrounded him, held back only by the thin layer of his suit. The pursuit ship was 100 meters away, hovering in the darkness, its pilot waiting to see what the cargo hauler would do. Daniel launched himself toward it. He pushed off from the hull of the cargo hauler with all his strength, aiming for the pursuit ship. In the weightlessness of space, he floated across the gap like a ghost. The pilot did not see him coming. Why would he? No sane person would leave a ship in the middle of an asteroid field. But Daniel had done things like this before, in different environments against different enemies for different reasons. The principles were the same. He reached the pursuit ship and grabbed onto a sensor array. The pilot still had not noticed him. Daniel pulled himself along the hull toward the cockpit, moving carefully, avoiding anything that might alert the enemy inside. When he reached the cockpit, he activated the cutting torch. The pilot finally saw him. A face appeared in the viewport, twisted with shock and fear. The pilot tried to shake Daniel loose, throwing the ship into wild maneuvers, but Daniel held on. The tether kept him connected and his grip was strong. He cut through the cockpit seal. Air rushed out. The pilot tried to reach for a weapon, but it was too late. Daniel finished the cut and the cockpit breached completely. The pursuit ship went dark, its pilot lost to the vacuum. Daniel pushed away and activated his communicator. "Now, go now." Did not hesitate. She pushed the engines to full power and the cargo hauler shot forward, leaving the asteroid field behind. Within minutes, they were in clear space, broadcasting their distress signal on all frequencies. Daniel floated in the darkness, his suit's air supply running low. He watched the cargo hauler disappear into the distance and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Peace. He had done what needed to be done. He had protected the people he loved. Whatever happened next, he could accept. The rescue ships found him 30 minutes later. A warship, part of the fleet Emperor had sent to save his children. They pulled Daniel from space and brought him aboard, where was waiting. She ran to him the moment he stepped out of the airlock. She threw her arms around him and held him than she had ever held anything. "You fool," she whispered. "You beautiful, impossible fool." Daniel held her back. "I promised I would explain everything. I keep my promises." Later, on the journey home, Daniel told the full story of his life. The missions, the violence, the things he had seen and done. He told her about the cost of being what he was and the reasons he had chosen to leave it behind. Listen to everything. When he was finished, she took his hand. "I thought you were ordinary," she said. "I thought I needed to protect you. I was wrong about everything." "You were not entirely wrong," Daniel said. "I am ordinary in many ways. I cannot lift objects with my mind. I cannot sense emotions from a distance. I will live only a fraction of your. Those things do not matter." "No," Daniel agreed. "They do not. What matters is that I love you. What matters is that I will stand beside you, no matter what comes. That is the only strength that truly counts." When they returned to the Empire, Emperor demanded to know how an ordinary human had accomplished what trained warriors could not. Answered simply. Her husband had never been ordinary. She had simply been too blind to see his true strength. And that strength was not about violence or combat skills. It was about love. It was about loyalty. It was about the willingness to face any danger for the people he cared for. They returned to Prime and their quiet life together, but everything had changed. When looked at Daniel now, she did not see a fragile human who needed protection. She saw a partner, an equal, the strongest person she had ever known. And Daniel, for his part, was happy to simply be her husband, the man who brought her tea in the mornings and asked about her day in the evenings, the man who loved her completely, without reservation. That was enough. That had always been enough. They just had not realized it until now.